Hey guys, Nedzo here. This is my first video where I'm going to be going completely without a script. I'm going to be discussing the reasons why Lewis Hamilton's move to Ferrari will not work. For those who don't know, many reliable news sources have been saying that Lewis Hamilton is going to be moving to Ferrari for 2025. Some even say that he could be moving for this season, but I doubt this will happen. Pre-season prep has been done, so I doubt that he'll be moving this season. But I'm going to give our reasons why I don't see why he's doing this. I don't see why he's moving to Ferrari in any way. I don't get it. So, the first point I'd like to discuss is his age. I mean, Lewis, right now, obviously, in 2024, is turning 39 this year. And, well, you got to think, when you get to that sort of age, you're in the latter part of your career. He's not going to be in F1, I don't think, to see the 2026 engine regulations come into play. And if he does, he will only be in there for one season. Because if you look, the only driver we have as a comparison for this kind of age and this kind of consistency is Fernando Alonso and maybe Kimi Räikkönen, but Kimi was only in it for a hobby, as we all know. I don't think that Lewis has managed to keep his consistency and his ability with age like Fernando has. I think that because obviously Fernando took that break in 2018, or after 2018, to get that Triple Crown of Motorsport that he was so wanting to get. Lewis hasn't done that. Lewis has had about, how many seasons is it now? So 2007 to 2023. 16 seasons now, but by the time he'll be at Ferrari, he'll have had 18 seasons consecutively. That is just massive burnout. The only driver who ever had that many consecutive seasons was Graham Hill, and even then, he had breaks and stuff because he got his leg break in Watkins Glen, and he had his other bits of stuff. Like, for example, Alonso was in from 2001 or from 2003 until 2018. He had a 15-year career after his 1-year stint with Minardi. I think Lewis, on the other hand, is not on that level in terms of longevity. I think that he's fallen off in recent years, or he definitely fell off in 2022. I know he had his experimental setups, and I know he had his other things, but I don't think Lewis is at the same level he was in, for example, 2020. I don't think he's at that level of driving. I don't see him competing on that level. But I think, just in general, everyone, because obviously drivers are definitely going to be elongating their careers longer than they would have 30 years ago. Like, for example, the only drivers who really went into their 40s 20 to 30 years ago were like your Schumachers. I mean, Schumacher obviously wasn't in the 2000s or 90s, but Nigel Mansell, Alain Prost, even he didn't go until his 40s. Nigel Mansell was pretty much the only one who actually had success in his 40s. He had his, obviously, 1992 campaign, he was, 39? And then when he came back with Williams in 94, post-Senna, he got a win in Adelaide and was very good, actually, considering his lack of experience in those era cars. But I suppose we haven't really seen drivers of his age do well, Lewis, that is. And I think that will definitely have an impact. But also, another point that I want to discuss, not just his age, but it's a sidestep, in my opinion. Going from Ferrari to Mercedes is a sidestep. It's not a move forward. Mercedes, as we all know, it's had a great last decade, but recently it's kind of fallen off to the point where it is a second or third best team, maybe even fourth best team in some eras, in some instances in last season, when McLaren got their shit together. I think that Ferrari are in no better position than Mercedes are. And I don't see why Lewis has done this. If he'd have gone to, like, for example, Red Bull, or he'd gone back to McLaren, I could somewhat understand what he's doing, because obviously Red Bull is the best team on the grid right now, and I don't think they're going to be beaten until at least the new engine regulations in 2026. But you look at, for example, McLaren are on an upward trajectory. McLaren are on this pace where they're going to be, if we go off their 2023 form, they're going to be rapidly accelerating up to being the best team on the grid. Obviously, I don't think they're going to do that. I don't think they're going to stay on that same trajectory. I think they will level out. That's the thing. I don't think Ferrari are on that trajectory. Ferrari, obviously, they got the new regulations in 2022 very good. They obviously were competing with Red Bull in the first half of 2022, and then they just fell off once Red Bull got their shit together. Ferrari, in general, aren't that good at being consistent, obviously. We've seen in the last couple of years, especially in pit stops and in strategy, and just in general car development, they don't seem to be able to consistently perform at the level of a World Championship winning team. They genuinely don't seem to be able to perform at a level where you go, this team is going to win the championship. We saw it a little bit with Vettel in 2017 and 18, but after the summer break, he was just not there. Same with Leclerc in 2022. Mercedes, on the other hand, they've either been in the hunt for the championship or they've not been in the hunt for the championship. They have been consistent in the case that they will be consistent throughout a season. If they start a championship as title contenders, they will end the season as title contenders. If they start the season as non-title contenders, they won't be at the end of the season. I mean, we saw in 2022, well, they won one race towards the end of 2022 in Sao Paulo, but they never looked like challenging for the title. I just don't get it. I just don't get this move, because another thing to consider with the teams is that Lewis will be moving from Mercedes, which is a team that he has been crucial in for the last decade and a bit, to Ferrari, where he won't be the number one driver. Now, I think that Lewis is top 3 drivers on the grid, and I think that he's probably only second to Verstappen in terms of pure driving talent and what he can get out of a car when all conditions are perfect. But I still think that Ferrari aren't going to instantly just make him number one as soon as he comes in, because they've got Leclerc in the other seat. Charles Leclerc is their golden boy. He is the modern-day Gilles Villeneuve. He is the modern-day Jean Alesi. I mean, maybe not Jean Alesi, because, you know, Leclerc's actually managed to win quite a few races. Jean Alesi in the case that he crashes a lot. But you know what I mean? Like, getting rid of Leclerc would be like getting rid of Schumacher in the 1996 to 1999 era, where they haven't actually won any titles yet, but they've been looking sort of like they're going to. Maybe not 98, maybe 96 to 97. Actually, maybe just 96. But you get what I mean. He's not a driver you can just replace, or he's not a driver you can just throw to the side and say, oh, you can be there for a couple of seasons and then bugger off, like they've done with Sainz, like they did with Raikkonen from 2014 to 2018. So they'd be in this situation where they've got 2 elite-level drivers that are just going to be going at each other, and Lewis never wins in those situations. You see, a lot of people will probably say I'm a Hamilton hater for saying this, but he can only win in the best car. I'm not saying it as he's a bad driver because he can only win in the best car, but Lewis can only win in the best car. Let's be real about it. You look at his career. 2007, he was in the best car, but he had a really good teammate, and they took points off each other because they were busy scrapping between each other. 2008, Kovalainen just wasn't on Lewis's level, and I think that season, obviously, Massa was on his level, but Ferrari and McLaren in that year were sort of equal. Not equal in terms of that raw performance. They're never going to be absolutely equal, but they were equal in terms of most aspects of performance. And yes, Massa also got very unlucky, we got to point out in that season. I mean, Lewis retired from a couple of races. I can't exactly think of any retirements that he had that weren't his fault. Obviously, we had, like, Canada was his fault. I'm trying to think of other ones that weren't his fault to try and give a bit of balance, but I can't exactly remember any. I should have done some research before going into this completely scriptless. But you look at Massa in 2008, he had the engine failure with 3 laps to go in Hungary, he had the fuel hose go berserk in Singapore, and he had multiple times where he could. He had stuff like Silverstone as well. It wasn't just all his bad luck. He had like Silverstone where he spun out 5 times, and while Lewis was busy gapping the field by a minute and was one of the best drives in F1 history, if not the best driver. I mean, I don't think it's the best, but some people might say it's the best. Definitely over the last 20, 30 years, it's one of the best. But yeah, I believe that obviously I'm going through Lewis's career, aren't I now? So obviously 2009 he couldn't really show anything. I mean, he showed some stuff towards the end of 2009 because McLaren actually got their shit together and got the double diffuser going well. 2010 was when Jensen came in, and Lewis challenged for the title-ish. He was always in the picture, but I mean, Ferrari, Red Bull and McLaren in 2010, apart from Massa, were all in the title fight at one point or another. I mean, Massa was at the start of the season, so, I mean, he wasn't that much better than Jensen in 2010. He had his standout moments, but he wasn't that much better. Same with 2011, obviously. Jensen was second in the drivers' standings, while Lewis was, I can't remember, 5th, 6th, and he was busy crashing into Felipe Massa every 5 seconds that season. While Jensen was obviously winning races and being runners up to Sebastian Vettel. 2012, you could say Lewis was definitely better than Jensen. And he got unlucky with retirements in Singapore. I remember, because I remember watching that race live. I remember watching Abu Dhabi live. I remember watching Brazil live. Actually, I don't remember watching them live, but I remember seeing Lewis retire. I remember watching Brazil live, and I distinctly remember my dad saying, "Hulkenberg, you idiot," when Lewis got ran into by Hulkenberg in Brazil. And he obviously had a lot of unlucky retirements that season. I think without those, it'd be wishful thinking to say he would have won the championship in 2012, because he had 3 or 4 retirements that weren't his fault. That adds up to about 100 points. He wasn't within 100 points of Vettel, I don't think, because I think Raikkonen was 3rd and he was on 80 points behind Vettel and Alonso. So it's really difficult. It's really difficult to see what's going to happen with this whole. I mean, another thing is, I'm recording this video at 4 o'clock in the afternoon on the 1st of February. this could all be a publicity stunt because Mercedes haven't announced anything, Ferrari haven't announced anything, Lewis Hamilton hasn't announced anything, Carlos Sainz hasn't announced it. Like, you look at all the parties involved. The only thing is, you've got reputable media sources like Sky Sports and ESPN and all those people. They are saying this is going to happen, and they've got journalists saying this is going to happen. But there's nothing coming out of. It's very hush hush. Like, Mercedes have had an internal meeting at 2:00 today, or if you're watching this in the future, the 1st of February. It's all weird. It's all very hush hush, and I think that going back to the whole cars point, I think Lewis needs to be in a team where he will be the number one driver, will have a subservient teammate, and will be in the best car. And he's not going to be in the best car at Ferrari. Ferrari are not going to be. No one is going to beat Red Bull, as I said, until the 2026 engine regulations come along. No one is going to beat them. He doesn't have a subservient teammate because Leclerc will not be number 2 driver to him under any circumstance. And not just on a personal level, Leclerc will not just. It's not that he just not want to be the best driver, because obviously, like in 2018 and 2019, Valtteri Bottas said he wasn't going to be number 2 driver to Lewis voluntarily. He just was because he wasn't quick enough. Leclerc can match Lewis in terms of outright pace, maybe not in terms of race pace, but definitely in terms of qualifying pace. But yeah, there's a lot of stuff all about it, and yeah, and obviously Ferrari can't make a good car, or they can't make a World Championship winning car at the moment. He's not going to have a number 2 teammate, and what was the other point I mentioned? Best car. It might have just been best car and subservient teammate. Yeah, it's just all a bit up in the air kind of thing. I mean, another point you could go at that is not going to work at Ferrari is the fact he's British. The fact that Lewis Hamilton is British will probably work against him, because it's not that Italians don't like British, or that because there have been successful British drivers in Italian teams, or in Ferrari specifically. You could say John Surtees, 1964 world champion, Mike Hawthorn, 1958 world champion. I mean, that was 60, 70 years ago, but it's still relevant. But I suppose also, you could also look at the fact that pretty much every single champion, bar Michael Schumacher, would speak negatively about Ferrari in their time there. Like, you look at Ascari won his championships there but died, so he couldn't really have a career to say stuff about Ferrari. Fangio, after his career, said that Enzo Ferrari was the worst team principal he worked under. He said that, I can't remember, I don't know exactly what he said, so this is just paraphrasing, but I remember him saying that the way Enzo did things he didn't like, and he spent one season. I mean, his time there reflects that. He did one season, won the championship, and then buggered off to Maserati because he knew that Ferrari had the best car that season. Mike Hawthorn obviously didn't have a retirement to really say anything. Phil Hill left Ferrari after his championship-winning season to join a rebel team because of how badly Ferrari was being run. I think it was being run by, or not being run by, but was being influenced by Enzo Ferrari's wife, who didn't know what she was doing. And then you look at, like, for example, John Surtees, obviously. Even John Surtees, who we just mentioned, he had his championship-winning season in 64, then buggered off after 66 to join the Honda Works project because he didn't like the way the team was being run. Jackie Ickx was he just drove for lots of all big teams, so I don't really know of him saying anything bad about Ferrari. But Niki Lauda, 1975 and 1977 champion, left Ferrari 2 races early in the 77 season, in his championship-winning season in 77, because he had such a big lead, and because he didn't like the way Ferrari was being run, and he wanted to join Brabham instead, even though he knew that Brabham didn't have a World Championship-winning car. I mean, he never won a championship with Brabham. He won a couple of races. He won a couple of races in 78. He won Italy and Sweden, obviously Sweden with the Brabham fan car, but yeah, I mean, like, you look at all the champions. Obviously, Alain Prost was never a champion with Ferrari, but he fell out with them. Well, he got fired by them because obviously he said the car handled like a truck when he didn't have any power steering, which is, I mean, I've never driven. Believe it or not, as a random 19-year-old who's just a massive nerd about F1 history, I've never driven a 1990s F1 car without power steering compared to with power steering. But I can imagine it's a bit of a ball ache, to be honest. Obviously, Schumacher will always, I mean, he can't really speak, but he would always, if he was not in a vegetative state, that he would speak positively about Ferrari, because that was the peak of his career. You look at other drivers, they are like all your world champions, like your Laudas, your Prosts, they didn't have their career peak at Ferrari. They never had their peak career at Ferrari. Like, more recent examples, Alonso and Vettel definitely didn't have their peaks at Ferrari. Even, as I said, Lauda obviously got most of his success there. I think he is, behind Schumacher, the most successful Ferrari driver. But I would say that his McLaren stint was arguably more... I mean, actually, that would be a stretch to say his McLaren stint was more successful, or he was a better driver there, because I don't think he was. He was definitely not as good in qualifying. Because obviously in his 1984 season, he got no pole positions. Same with Denny Hulme in 1967. Yeah, this is just turning into a massive rant, really. I'm going to probably turn this series... It's probably going to be called the Rant Series. It's already gone on for 18 minutes, but I love just rambling on about F1 history. That's why this has been like it is. Yeah, I've talked about all the points that I wanted to talk about in this video, but yeah, the reasons why... so, to conclude, the reasons why I don't think this Ferrari move will work out for Hamilton is because, one, he's too old. Like, he will be 40 when this move comes through, if it does come through when they say it's going to come through. And he'll have massive burnout. You got to think, as I said, he's been in F1 for 17, 18 years? Or at the time he'll have 17, 18 years. Consistently, just straight. Every other driver, like Alonso, has had a break in his career. Raikkonen had a break. Those are recent examples. And he's not had one. I think he will get burnt out. Ferrari won't provide him with the best car. They won't provide him with a subservient teammate and a number 1 contract unless they get rid of Leclerc and keep Sainz, which they won't do because Leclerc's the golden boy. And they will not just throw him aside like they would Sainz, or like they would another Sainz, or like they would Raikkonen or Vettel or stuff if they were towards the end of their careers, obviously. But another point that I've just thought of, I probably should have mentioned this earlier, but why are they doing this? Because obviously they've got junior drivers coming through the ranks. They've got Dino Beganovic, they've got Oliver Behrman, and, for example, Ollie Behrman, if he wins the F2 title this season, and they've already signed Hamilton for 2025, they're screwed. I mean, obviously they will probably put him in Haas first, or maybe not Haas because Haas don't have good experience with rookies, but maybe Stake, if they still use Ferrari engines in 2025, could be an option. Bringing Hamilton into this whole equation is going to make it more difficult for Ferrari. I think it'll be similar with the Red Bull situation. Obviously, end of 2020, they brought in Perez because they had not enough young drivers who were good enough to fill the seats, and now they have an abundance of young drivers, or a good abundance of drivers to fill the 4 seats they have in F1. Because obviously, at the end of 2020, the only Red Bull drivers you had, the ones that actually came through Red Bull, were Verstappen, Albon, who was going out, Tsunoda, who was coming in for 2021 as a rookie, and that was about it. Liam Lawson wasn't really a proven quantity at that point. I mean, he'd done a couple of seasons in F2, he might have had a good result, he might have got like 5th in one season, but he wasn't a proven quantity. They didn't have any other drivers. Now, Red Bull have Verstappen, they have Perez, they have Ricciardo, they have Tsunoda, they have Lawson, they have all the other junior drivers, Jack Crawford, Sebastian Montoya, everyone. And I think Ferrari could have a problem like Red Bull have now, where they have 6 or 7 drivers that they have to pick from. Ferrari don't have 4 seats, they have 2 seats. I mean, they have maybe 1 seat at Haas and 1 seat at Stake. If they say, oh, we'll give you a discount on Ferrari engines if you use one of our drivers. But that is going to be a difficult situation for Ferrari to manage. And especially, they're also getting rid of Sainz. Sainz is a dependable driver who, yes, he might not be as outright quick as Leclerc, but I think in some aspects he's better than Leclerc. I think I wouldn't pick him to challenge for a title with Ferrari, but I would pick him to put in a consistent season and be not necessarily a good number 2, but a very good backup. Maybe not, backup is the right word rather than number 2, I think, to Leclerc. Because I wouldn't put Leclerc that far ahead of Sainz in my estimations. Yeah, Lewis, I don't know. So they're going to have Leclerc, they're going to bring in Hamilton. I don't know how Hamilton's going to perform in a new team. Obviously, he's only had 2 teams in his career. It's not like Alonso, where he's jumped from team to team to team to team. He's not like Raikkonen, who also jumped from team to team. He's not like Vettel, who jumped from team to team. Lewis is not, and also obviously this will be his first time not using Mercedes engines. I don't think, obviously, engine performance is a thing, but I don't see them doing. I don't see that being a massive impact. The bit I see a massive impact will be the car platform. Obviously, Ferrari cars are not going to be built like a Mercedes or a McLaren. I mean, that's just common sense. I don't think he's going to adapt to that, and also that environment. It is Ferrari, as I said. I didn't mention this. I should have mentioned this as well. Ferrari is the most politically motivated, the most politically entrenched team on the grid. And unless Lewis gets a leg up from the start, he's not going to be able to win that political game. I mean, you look, as I said, this links into the whole British drivers in Ferrari. Like the two most recent examples, admittedly they are 30 years ago, so it's not great. But Nigel Mansell couldn't get a leg up on Alain Prost because Alain Prost spoke Italian and he didn't bother trying to learn Italian because, well, British people never bother to learn foreign languages. I do, but I know everyone else doesn't. And then you got Eddie Irvine, who was just a bit just a bit average, because he was obviously Schumacher's number 2. Maybe they just didn't. I mean, also, obviously, this situation is not comparable to Irvine at Ferrari, because obviously Hamilton isn't a number 2. Although he's not a number 1, he's definitely not a number 2. And Mansell, obviously, Mansell was he was a half-proven quantity before he got to Ferrari. Obviously, he hadn't won a championship, or he hadn't won his singular championship yet, but he was definitely, everyone could see that he was a championship caliber driver, but he was never going to beat Prost in that team. Prost is the Prost is/was the political master, the professor. He knew how to play the political game. I don't know if Hamilton knows how to play the political game. I don't think he'll be able to get a leg up on Fred Vasseur, not John Tott. We're not living in 2005 anymore. But I don't think he'll be able to get a leg up on the people who work at Ferrari. I don't think he'll be able to do that and get what he wants to do done. I don't think he'll be able to beat Leclerc in that system. I think he might be able to beat Leclerc on track, but I don't think he'll be able to beat Leclerc in the political game, and therefore get the team on his side, is what I'm trying to say. In conclusion, so I've said in conclusion twice now. I said it a couple of minutes ago, and now I'm saying it now. So in conclusion, I think that Lewis Hamilton is too old to be able to challenge for a title with Ferrari. I think that the whole team is not geared towards him. Obviously, they're not going to have a championship-winning car. At least I don't think so. They're not going to have him being the number one driver. They're not going to have a subservient teammate. That was the bit I forgot. Subservient teammate. What else have I been talking about? Yeah, I think the fact he's British would definitely weigh against him. I think, as I said, and this will round it all off. This is going to be interesting to see how this unfolds. If it comes out that this video is just completely useless in about 2 hours' time, I'm going to be fuming. Knowing my luck, that is exactly how it'd work. But yeah, I believe that this is possibly, or obviously because we've not had any moves in the driver market at all this season for the first time in F1 history. And we've possibly had the biggest bombshell we've had in at least 5 years, maybe 10 years. Maybe you could even go back to Hamilton's initial statement that he was going to leave McLaren to join Mercedes. I mean, you could also say Vettel leaving Red Bull, but I suppose that was at the end of a shit season. And so if he'd done that, for example, at the end of his title-winning campaign with Red Bull, that would have been quite big. But I think you could genuinely say that this is the biggest transfer for a driver since Hamilton left McLaren. But yeah, tell me what you guys think. Obviously, I've rambled on for a little bit. I'm at 26 minutes in the recording booth, but I might cut this down for breathing and all that shit. So it might end up being like 20 minutes. But tell me what you guys think. Do you think this is going to work for McLaren? Do you think this is going to work for Lewis? Do you think that I'm just wrong and I've not said it all right and I'm just shit? What do you think? Shout out to my channel members as usual. Andy Lamberts, who I know pays for stuff. You can pay for stuff if you want to hear more of his rambling content, because obviously this is brand new for me. I usually do scripted F1 history. This is Theodore F1 team. This is Fittipaldi F1 team. This is that. This race happened. But I thought I'd do something a bit more off the cuff, because I think I do like doing it, and it engages more. And I think everyone, we'll see how people like it. If this video flops, then I won't do it again. But I don't think it will flop. I think all you guys will love it. With that being said, yeah, I see you, yeah, I can't speak words, English, but you get what I mean. I'm Nedzo, and I'll see you all later. Bye!